Good morning, Abundant Life Church. This is Pastor Chris, and today we're going to be starting a new study on John chapter 6, verses 1 down through 15. Now, I want to start today by talking about probably the greatest baseball player of all time, Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth, back in, I honestly don't remember what year it was, I think it was like 1927 or so, he set the record for the most home runs hit in a single season, 60 home runs. He hit more than some teams hit as a whole. That record stood for years, and it's still a mark of an incredible season. But in 1961, both Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris, teammates on the New York Yankees, Babe Ruth's team, were chasing that record. Mickey Mantle got hurt, and Roger Maris went on a tear, and he was getting close. And Roger Maris, before this, he was a good ball player, really good, but he wasn't in the league of Babe Ruth. And some people were starting to get a little irritated that Roger Maris was closing in on the great Babe Ruth's hallowed record. And one sports writer suggested that what Roger Maris should do is when he gets to 59 runs, quit. Just stop playing baseball. That was a really stupid suggestion. Why would he work that hard to stop just short of the record? By the way, he did set the record, 61 home runs. Right when you have the moment of glory, right when that moment is right there, you're supposed to quit and run off? That doesn't make any sense. But in the story we're going to look at, it almost feels like that's what Jesus was doing. This passage is where Jesus feeds 5,000 people, but there's some rather odd questions surrounding his miracle. Feeding all these people would make him very popular right then. I mean, this is when he could really strike. The iron is hot, and he could capitalize on that popularity and become enormously popular. What does Jesus do? He runs off instead. He hides because he doesn't want the people making him a king. Okay, but if that's how he felt, then why do this miracle in the first place? What was the point of feeding the 5,000 people if you're not going to use it to develop an even greater following? How did Jesus think the people were going to react to this miracle of feeding all of them? Now, the reason there was such a huge crowd, you have to understand, 5,000 people. By the way, when it says 5,000, that's only 5,000 men. They didn't count the women and children. So let's suppose that this was a crowd of 15 to 20,000 people. And the reason this crowd was so big is Passover was coming. These were people who were on their way traveling to Jerusalem for the Passover. So these were Jews. And they were expecting not just the Passover, but they were also expecting that this Jesus guy that they'd heard so much about might just be their Messiah, might just be the guy that they had all been waiting for. So it's not going to take a whole lot to win them over. They are primed to get really enthusiastic about him. That was the mood there. And Jesus knew that, and he knew full well what he was doing with the idea of feeding them. Let's look at verses 1 through 6. Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is the Sea of Tiberias. And a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with the disciples. The Jewish Passover was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for all these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. There's no way to feed this crowd unless they had made some pretty extensive and pretty expensive preparations. And it really wasn't necessary to feed them. They were going to miss one meal if they stayed there. Big deal. Besides, since they're all traveling, most of them probably had some food with them. So this miracle really wasn't necessary. He wasn't saving their lives by feeding them lunch. Now let's look at verses 7 and 9. This is after Jesus says, well, all right, you give them something to eat. Philip answered him, "It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite." Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here's a boy with five small fishes, five small barley loaves, and two small fish. But how far will they go among so many? Philip knows it's going to be silly to even try to feed all these people. It's not possible. Andrew may have been sarcastically saying, hey, this kid's willing to give his lunch. Yeah, a lot of good that's going to do. If we were to, on a Sunday morning, get all of our people together in church, and I were to hand the first person an M&M and say, now, leave enough for everybody else. Just take a little nibble and then pass it on. That M&M ain't working. It's not going to cover it. You can't feed all these people with one kid's lunch. It's nothing. But then Jesus does exactly that. Verses 10 through 13. Jesus said, have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, gather the pieces that are left over, let nothing be wasted. So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the five barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. Jesus feeds them. He ends up with more leftovers than what they started with. The only time that happens is Thanksgiving. This was an obvious, undeniable miracle, and now they're in the palm of his hands. He's got them. Everybody there knows something fantastic happened. This guy has even more power than we thought. Look what he could do with one kid's lunch. They were overwhelmed. Verse 15. Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. In the midst of having him right in the palm of his hand, Jesus runs off. He hides so they don't make him the king. What? There's no point to this miracle other than that Jesus was winning the people over. They weren't starving. They weren't expecting to be fed. They didn't need to be fed. So there was only one reason to ever feed them miraculously like that, and that was to show these people, I am indeed the Messiah. I'm the one you've been waiting for. Great. So as soon as they're convinced, Jesus runs away and hides so they don't make him a king. Okay, if you didn't want that to happen, why do this miracle at all? Well, of course, the answer is found in the next session. Till then, have a great day.